I think we start with what's on the screen right now, which is the RFK endorsement of Donald Trump. At one point, the RFK vote was, what, 10, 15 points? Now it's down to 4. Yeah. Is this going to really make a difference?
It will, and it won't. It's probably worth about 1% for Trump, and that 1% could be everything if it's in all the swing states. In the end, the reason why Kennedy was drawing 10, 12, even as high as 14% is because he was taking votes away from Joe Biden. Joe Biden's gone. Kamala Harris has replaced him, and his vote collapsed down to about 5%. And what's left is a Trump vote. Some of them are simply not going to participate in November. Roughly 2 to 1, the ones who are remaining will vote for Trump over Harris, and that's worth a single percent, and a single percent can make the difference in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
All right, and they're in Arizona today. Look, Robert F. Kennedy went scorched earth on the Democratic Party today, right? They're bought and paid for, the corporate media. He was censored, on and on and on. If RFK had endorsed Harris rather than Trump, would the coverage and the conversation be a lot different about it?
That's a really good question. Good for you. That's a really good question. I think it would have been. I think, quite frankly, that most of the people who report the news, even though they're supposed to be objective, and even though they try to be objective, that there is a bias. And it's a bias that they hold inside, and sometimes it's reflected in what we see, what we hear, and probably most importantly, what we read. And the key here is whether or not you can have faith, trust, and confidence in what you're being told. If he had endorsed Harris, I do think he would have been regarded as a hero. But because he endorsed Trump, the people who are communicating that are not giving him the credit that he deserves. And I think that we have to be careful in the last 73 days of this election campaign to understand the motivations of the people who are providing us information like what I'm doing right now, because I am dedicated to getting this election correct.
Look, and you call balls and strikes, which is what we try to do here. There's a lot to unpack in what you just said, but to be fair, right, Donald Trump has been known to say, shall we say, some unusual things that require explanation, and that the people who report the news capture on, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly. The one person who says sometimes even wackier stuff than Donald Trump is Robert F. Kennedy. We don't know what he's going to say tonight, but we also know that if he goes out on the trail for Donald Trump, then Donald Trump has to answer for everything that Robert F. Kennedy says. Is that a good thing for Donald Trump?
Whatever Trump says, he's going to be held accountable for it. And I actually believe I'm one of the people who thinks he should be saying less, not more. That if the campaign is based on issues, particularly inflation and immigration, Donald Trump has the advantage. If the campaign is about the character traits and attributes of the candidates, then Kamala Harris has the advantage.
All right, so we think about the persuadable voters that are left out there, because you rightly point out there's not many of them. You think about who right now Donald Trump has in his camp. Tulsi Gabbard, Nikki Haley's endorsed him, and now Robert F. Kennedy. What is that group? What do those people represent that Trump has an opportunity to use?
So let me be candid that these endorsements don't matter as much as they used to. That because we have the ability to watch networks like yours, because we have the ability to collect information on social media, that we have an infinite capability to get the news from an infinite number of sources. Any one source, any one endorsement just doesn't matter as much as it did 20 or 30 years ago. Now, that said, if Trump communicates the width and breadth of ideological support for him, and if they focus on policy, that's going to be very good. I do need to emphasize, and to shooting this straight, that if it is about attributes, if he continues to attack Harris and the way that he has done, and he gets away from inflation, which is really affordability, stops talking about paycheck to paycheck voters, which is better than working class or middle class. The language does matter here. If he does that, He's in the driver's seat.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.